Republican Congressman from Iowa, Nunn. Congressman, thank you very much for being here today. Let's pose the same question. Let's talk about the government shutdown and talking about the flight delays, because so many people it's Sunday. People are making plans for the holidays. People want to know when a deal is going to be made. Obviously, SNAP benefits, we'll talk about that in a second. But, you know, when you talk about these combined things that really are affecting the American people, when are we going to see a deal?
Laura, you're asking the absolute right question. The real pain here is this did not have to happen. All the way back in September, the House passed a clean CR, the exact same type of consistent funding that we have seen all the way back from when Schumer agreed to do it back in May. Now, here's the reality, and it's very painful. We've got families who are trying to get home for holidays. I talked to my TSA guys, some of the folks who are the lowest paid federal employees. They're going their third pay period with no pay. I've got 2,000 Iowa National Guardsmen forward deployed to combat zones right now, and their spouses are calling up saying, hey, I don't know whether I can fill up my minivan or whether I can fill up my fridge heading into Thanksgiving. And worst of all, I've been out at our food pantries, and we've seen firsthand the great heroics of Iowans trying to help stand up and feed our community. But the reality is, for every one food bank meal that goes out, there are 9 more Iowans who also need those SNAP benefits. And right now, we know for a fact there are only 5 members of the U.S. Senate who've taken the entire country hostage, not because the House didn't want it, the Senate doesn't want it, the American people don't want it, they all do. But they've decided that they can leverage this, not to help the American people, but because they are afraid of their leftist base. And it's so true, we're already hearing multiple leaks coming out of the U.S. Senate from senators, my colleagues, who have said, if we agree to a deal now, we'll be guillotined when we go back home. I mean, this is the type of fear, not of the American people, but of a few extremists on their base in the Senate that are preventing a basic funding bill from moving forward.
Listen, I want to go back to something that you just said. If you could give me a short answer, what are those TSA agents saying to you who are going into a third pay period without a paycheck? How are they making ends meet? Because, you know, we've been talking to people who are some federal workers that have to do DoorDash deliveries, right? What are they doing to get food on the table for their families?
Laura, I heard directly from my TSA guys in Des Moines, Iowa, as I headed back to D.C. I was hoping to open the government this week, and they said, keep fighting. It is my third pay period. We don't blame Republicans. We blame the people who are keeping it shut. That's not all Democrats, but it's certainly 5. And that was directly from their mouth for guys who have been not paid going on a month and a half.
Okay, well, we know that some people are taking on second and third jobs in some cases. Let's take a listen to Democratic senators calling Republicans out on flight delays and those SNAP food payments. Listen here.
Instead of negotiating with Democrats to reopen the government, they'd rather ground flights. Instead of negotiating with Democrats to help families, they're punishing travelers. Instead of governing, Republicans are playing games with people's livelihoods.
Because of Trump not willing to fund SNAP, we're worried that 16 million children in America may go hungry, and the Republicans in the House of Representatives are on a paid vacation.
All right, so I'll just ask you what your response is to that.
Well, Laura, it's just sad. I actually had a colleague in the Senate who said, you don't take the American people hostage and throw a tantrum when you don't get your way on a funding bill. You know who that was? It was Chuck Schumer 6 months ago. I gave up my pay. I'm a military member. I'm continuing to help folks who need that. You know who didn't give up their congressional pay? That exact 2 individuals you just heard. Now, here's the reality. When Bernie Sanders says that he needs his paycheck, he should be talking to those families in Iowa who aren't getting their SNAP benefits, who may not get their WIC benefits. This is a tragedy that does not need to happen. The reality is the House has had a clean spending CR, something Washington's always done, something I've always voted for, whether a Republican or a Democrat is president. We can have a conversation about making sure Americans have their health care, but that's a 2026 issue. We have something that now needs to happen 40 days ago to make sure this Veterans Day week that veterans aren't worried whether their families are going to be able to eat or that their military pay is going to continue to be withheld. You don't take a country hostage. You work towards a plan. And the reality is Democrats don't have a plan that they're recommending. It's a moving target. We've talked in the House about what we can do to help. They won't even pass basic things like paying our federal forces and reinstating SNAP, a bill that we brought up, a bill the Senate's brought up, and it's been voted down 14 times by Senate Democrats.
Listen, I understand that you spent some time with Iowa farmers and small business owners that are heavily impacted by this shutdown. So you talk about the TSA workers and the others that you talked to. What did you hear from these small business owners and the farmers?
Yeah, I think right here in the heart of the heartland, people just want solutions. They don't want the partisan bickering to go on here. They like people to be able to move forward. I think that policy conversations should be happening on all these issues, but the reality is that we can't do that until we open up the government. And right now, the uncertainty, the unwillingness, particularly after this past week's election, I feel that, Democrats were almost going to come back to the table, and then they decided to walk away. In Schumer's own words, every day the government's closed, it gets better for us. But in Senator Fetterman's words, a Democrat from Pennsylvania, he said the Democratic Party needs to get its SHIT together because it's hurting real people. And there were folks back home are saying that. My food pantries are getting bare because neither party is able to help feed these folks when the government shut down. And it's the Democratic Party that has the key to unlock this. Let's get back to Washington and do our work. But most importantly, let's just take care of fellow Americans. This doesn't have to be a red or a blue issue. This is a do the right thing issue.
All right. So we'll have to leave it there, but I really appreciate your perspective. Republican Congressman from Iowa, Zach Nunn, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll talk again soon.